My name is Agent John Damascus. There are a few things I'm not clear on. Certain names appear in your files that I'm not completely familiar with. Perhaps you could shed some light on a name or two and help me out. Let's try one out. Spawnography.
Spawnography! They took my podcast. They came back from hell and they ripped off my podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Spawnography. Oh boy.
We're having fun out here.
We're having fun. We're doing voices. We're having fun.
Yeah,
that's
having fun with radio.
It's half the fun. It's why we're an audio only podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Not for any other reason, like I'm not good at video editing. I'm one of your hosts, Pierce Leiden, pronouns they, them. Here with, as always,
George Marston, pronouns they, them, or she, her.
How you doing, George?
You know, I'm just a broad who's ready to cast a pod.
I love that for you. The summer of Hellspawn continues.
That's right. The summer
we'll be halfway through.
Hellspawn. That's right. We will be halfway through. And these are some interesting issues we're about to get into. Before we dig into them, Pierce, how's your week been? It's actually been a little while since we've talked. This time we had every time the wind blows too hard, my power goes out because I live in an area that's full of big old trees and there's always just one falling somewhere.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll just get a text from you that's like, nope, don't have power. Guess I'll sit in the dark. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
See you next time. But, I'm good. It's Monday. I had a good holiday weekend, I guess. I had some time off. I went to the Mets Yankees game on yesterday.
Well, that sounds great.
That was really, really nice. Yankees won. Aaron Judge hit a home run. So love that for me and my squad. Gotta say, Citi Field, much better stadium than Yankee Stadium. It's just better.
Citi Field's pretty nice.
It's really nice. It's really
one
nice.
of two baseball stadiums I've been inside. So, well, three technically, I guess, because the Braves Stadium was different in 1991. And
what was it Sun something Park or something like that?
No, I can't remember. It was
SunTrust.
Oh, Jesus.
Is that what it is now?
No, it's Turner Field now, I believe. Or no, it's SunTrust Park now.
Now it's SunTrust Park.
Sorry, it's changed several times. It's Center Park Stadium now.
Oh.
It was originally Turner Field in 1997 and 2016. Before that, it was Fulton County Stadium.
Wait, right now it's Truist Park.
I think it's now. I just looked it up. Center Park Stadium.
I'm on MLB.com.
I don't fucking know, dude.
It says Truist Park since
Truist
2017.
What the fuck is Center Park Stadium?
Oh, it was SunTrust Park. I don't know what's.
Well, SunTrust became Truist.
Yeah. Changed its name in January 2020. It was Turner Field from 1997 to 2016.
Oh, I'm sorry. Center Park. For some reason, Google, and not even Google AI, because I don't look at that shit. For some reason, Google, when I looked up Turner Field, I believe Turner Field may have been converted into Center Park Stadium. Don't quote me on that, but that is where the Georgia State football plays. I don't fucking know.
Yes,
Google
it is
got
where
its
the Georgia
wires
State.
crossed.
That's where. Yeah, it's a football stadium now because it became it was the Olympic Stadium in 1996.
Right.
And then it became Turner Field.
Yes, which was the Braves moved there from Fulton County Stadium. Welcome to Baseballography. Pierce, I really think that's going to be a great section to cut.
It might not be.
I don't know. I'm sure I
But
said at least 3 wrong things
sometimes
in
I
there.
can't cut our little diversions because then it sounds like something's missing. I
Well-
did cut like 10 minutes of me explaining some baseball shit in a past episode. That
So our
like,
listeners probably don't know what baseball is
I mean, some of them
because we
definitely
cut out the
don't care.
references.
Yeah, but
Some of them do, like Todd McFarlane.
well, it's true. See, baseball is inherent to Spawn,
And actually,
as
that
we've
is very
discussed
true.
many times, actually, when we've talked about Todd's balls.
Yep.
And
His famous balls.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's
They
the names of
they
the
never did a
Atlantic.
baseball Spawn action figure.
They did a hockey card. We've talked about this. They did
I
a
know they
hockey
did a card. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they
no,
never did just, man,
Missed
what the
opportunity.
heck? I would like it. Okay.
Yeah, I want like a starting lineup, like
Starting lineup, like
Al
baseball
Simmons.
figures. It feels
Yeah.
like a natural mashup. Anyway.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
At least, listen, there are 2 people that want that. It's you and me. And there are probably dozens more.
I think there could be a third one, and his initials are Todd the God.
Yeah, so I had a good weekend, and I saw some baseball, which is always nice. It was really nice. The weather was great, and now I just saw an article that's like New York City is in for 144 hours straight of no sun.
I thought you were about to say 144-degree weather, and I was like,
I mean,
fuck, dude.
That before we die, that will be.
Yeah.
This is
the coldest summer of the rest of our lives.
Yeah, we'll be like, oh, can't go outside this week. Why? The sun will kill you.
Like RoboCop 2. Like
yeah, exactly.
The SPF 2000. I'm going to see Spinal Tap, the remaster of Spinal Tap in the theater tomorrow night. I'm very excited
for the sequel.
Medium. Here's the thing. Spinal Tap is, if not my favorite movie of all time, in the top 2 or 3. Certainly in terms of like my favorite comedies ever, it probably tops the list. For the record, the top 3 to me are that one, Young Frankenstein, and probably Walk Hard, maybe Dumb and Dumber. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I love all those movies, but Spinal Tap is really special to me. I've been in a lot of bands. If you've been in bands as you have, Pierce, you probably know how it hits just a little different, especially if you've been in metal bands like Hapless, kind of long running, but long suffering bands like I have.
I know that this is Spinal Tap and the sequel are both Rob Reiner joints. And I love some Rob Reiner movies.
Well, and that's the thing, is that I feel like there is probably comedic value in satirizing the idea of very old rock stars really outliving their presence. I mean,
we just had Ozzy
I was
retire
gonna say,
officially, so,
and God bless him, he gave it his all. Black Sabbath is probably my favorite band of all time while we're on the topic, so that was I actually haven't watched the whole thing yet because a lot of it was just Pantera and shit, and I don't fucking care about that.
Yeah.
But I saw a lot of Ozzy, and he was sitting in his throne doing his best. I think he's got like MS or something at this point.
That's sad.
I could be wrong about that, but I know that he's 155 years old when you factor in like the drug years. So like, I'm glad that he got to go out on top, sitting on the throne like the king of metal. Kind of a piece of a shit. Everybody who was in rock and roll, every cis man that was in rock and roll anyway, between 1957 and today, all your favorite hits, kind of a piece of shit. It's just goes with incredible success.
Comes with the territory.
But when we talk about the music, he was definitive.
Yeah. Also, I just looked up like Rob Reiner's like run from This Is Spinal Tap forward.
Pretty solid for a long time.
You know what? I take back what I said, which is I like some Rob Reiner movies. I like a lot of Rob Reiner movies. Makes a lot of movies I like a lot.
He kind of hits north, and that's kind of a wall for him.
This Is Spinal Tap. Then The Sure Thing, which I've never seen.
Yeah.
But these are years, like, so 1984, This Is Spinal Tap. 1985, The Sure Thing, which was a hit. 1986, Stand By Me.
Yep.
1987, Princess Bride.
Yep.
1989, When Harry Met Sally.
Yep.
1990, Misery.
Yep.
1992, A Few Good Men.
Yep.
That's a crazy 8-year span.
That is one of probably the best 8-year spans for a director. I mean, what was that, 5-6 movies? Like, if you look at like 6 movie spans for a director, first off, not many of them get to put out that many big movies that fast. Not many of them are able to.
You're right. North is right after that, so that's kind of
hit the wall. But that's still a great run, man. I mean, Stanley Kubrick only did 9 or 10 movies, I think, at most. And you look at that and it's almost the same amount of films, and I'm not comparing them stylistically or on merit necessarily, but like in terms of success and putting out movies that are considered great.
True. Yeah, you hope for half of that many.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and to do it in that short of a span is kind of incredible.
That's an incredible creative run. And that's not even mentioning his time as an actor before that.
Right. I was just going to say, he's also a very funny actor. Just before and during.
Yeah.
Like he's in Postcards from the Edge, which is a great movie. Carrie Fisher and he's in The Jerk, right?
Yeah.
He's a cameo in The Jerk.
Yep.
Anyway, Rob Reiner. Welcome to the Rob Reiner podcast.
Rob Reinography.
Rob Reinography is about a rhino named Rob. That's something else totally different.
Oh, sorry. Rob Reinerography.
Right. Correct. Yeah. You got to pronounce it correctly so people don't get confused.
Yeah. We'll get sued again.
Yeah. Anyway, this is not a podcast about the films of Rob Reiner. Maybe it could be if you demand it.
It kind of just was for about 5 minutes.
But we're talking about 2 issues of Hellspawn as the summer of Hellspawn continues. And Steve Niles is officially here. And he's going to be, we said a little bit before we started recording that this finally wings together nicely with where we left Spawn, with Steve Niles just joining the book and doing a little overt kill thing.
His little 2-parter with Jason Wynn in there.
Right.
Yep.
So in a very similar way, we're going to get the return of another character. We're going to get sort of, I think that we're starting to see Bendis got to experiment and like do his thing.
Yeah.
And then he's gone now. So Steve Niles is like, all right, I'm going to tell a story, but I also want to let like Ashley Wood do whatever the fuck he wants. And I don't want to totally lose the tone that Bendis was going for, but I want to sort of direct the narrative in a certain way.
There's almost a stylistic swap between how the writer and artist play into the story, where Steve Niles' story is kind of a more straightforward narrative than Bendis's, but his script is very amorphous, very poetic, very much less grounded than Bendis's was in like conversation and stuff, while Ashley Wood takes on a lot of the storytelling. And we'll get into some of this more once we get into these issues, because we'll talk more about the specifics of it. But it feels like Ashley Wood had a mandate, or an intent, let's say, rather, with Bendis to do a story that was very, very ethereal and kind of, impressionistic.
Yeah.
Whereas this feels more like shifting into the gear of doing something that's more of a straightforward comic, though not losing Ashley Wood's edge. I will say, we're also going to check in with a couple characters here that we haven't actually talked about ourselves in several episodes at this point.
That's true.
It's been some time, and I'm excited to see them pop up, especially Ashley Wood's rendition of them. So since we're already talking about it, Pierce, why don't you go ahead and hit me with those credits for Hellspawn number 7?
Alrighty. Hellspawn number 7, which has an incredible cover.
Yes, it does. I love this cover. It's like a black and white Ashley Wood rendition of Spawn.
So cool.
Ashley Wood, and while we're on the cover here, I'll just note, he's got his own style of drawing Spawn's mask and face now that's very skullish. And it's awesome. And he subtly implements that throughout these 2 issues. It looks so good. We'll get into it, but please continue.
All right. Hellspawn number 7, Todd McFarlane and Image Comics present Shed. Story by Steve Niles. Salmon Twitch sequence by Todd McFarlane.
Very
And I think
interesting.
that actually has a little bit to do with the direction of this. Art and cover by Ashley Wood. Lettering by Richard Starkings. And comic crafts Oscar Gongora. Yeah. So we open kind of, as you said, Steve Niles' script, pretty poetic, although I don't know that this first page is him. I think this is our first Todd in a while.
It might be. Okay, so the first page is a beautifully rendered cityscape by Ashley Wood of Manhattan. I would hang this on my wall. I love it.
Cool.
Like,
really cool.
I would look like a sorority girl in her first apartment with like just generic art of New York City, but it'd be Ashley Wood and it would look awesome. I think
love this because it almost looks like it's reflected off of something. It looks like a puddle, but it looks like the city.
But it's the seat, it's the streets, and it's a beautiful rendition. Really especially cool. Given the description that's on the page. First off, it starts off with the like Webster's Dictionary defines kind of definition of metamorphosis, which we know what that means, transforming from one thing into another. And it will be relevant here because that's kind of the theme of what's happening to Spawn in this issue. Shed is very much a reference to a transformation that Spawn will have. And I mean, we've seen Spawn go through a transformation a lot of times. What happens here, it's not explicitly explained exactly what it means, but it seems like trying to concretely say, like, yes, Spawn has gone through an actual transformation as a result of the events of Spawn 100 and what happens after. His powers have evolved, his body has evolved, and we're going to not necessarily explain that, but address it.
Yeah. And his approach has evolved as he's, kind of continued through this book. It's so funny. I was doing some research for the book, and a Reddit post popped up from one of the Spawn subreddits where somebody was like, this was fairly recently, was just like, do you think that it's fair criticism to say that Spawn has become like less of a character and more of a like corporate symbol in the way that Superman is, because he's so static and doesn't really change? And I think the reality there is like, no, because he's not, I would argue he's not even Image Comics' biggest superhero. It's Invincible now,
right?
I'd say. Yeah. In terms of like current popularity, right?
Current, yes. Invincible has a current television show.
Right. Has a lot more cultural cachet with the everyday person who's not a little bit either old like us or like cares about comics and the history of comics in that way. But also that, like, I think Spawn does change. Like, I understand the criticisms of the character that and I've leveled them on this show before, that it's like frustrating sometimes when he doesn't get somewhere. But, I was explaining this to my brother. We were talking about Spider-Man, and I was like, the thing with Spider-Man is you always want him to fail. But at some point, as like an audience member, you only, and like this happens with the X-Men as well, right? As they can only be like genocided so many times before you go, you know what? I don't think I need to see this again. Right. So I understand people like kind of checking in and out on the book. And I do think that like characters do get resets. I do think what's happening here, and I think the reason for like the Webster's Dictionary definition is just trying to say like, all right, if you're not getting it already, I know we're taking a long time to do it, but this is the thesis that we're putting out here. This is what we want to explore. And we do explore it within these pages. The thing that is weird, and we talked about a little bit last episode, is the Miracle Man of it all. Right. It feels like that's supposed to be like the magic way to do something, that it has to get abandoned. But
well, it's funny that question of whether Spawn has changed enough or not. We go all the way back to the Coco Swiss with the Dave Sim issue, where you've got Superman as like a captive, of the corporate identity that he's tied to. I don't think Spawn has that, like you said, because sometimes it can feel like it's going at a glacial pace, but when you look back, Spawn consistently evolves visually in terms of the tone of the story, and Spawn and Todd himself has, when we talked to him, tried to hammer home that he wants Spawn to change every couple hundred issues or whatever, and they're not hard reboots. I think that's the thing that throws some people off, is that they expect like a big status quo change to come with like a new number one.
Right.
Not what's happening here.
All new, all different Spawn.
Right. That's not what's happening.
Right.
Although it also is, because Todd has always been putting out, side books, side characters. Look at the current Spawn universe era where there's like 4 or 5 different Spawns of different places and times. Not just because that's a concept that's baked into the character, but because it's doing that without leaving what's been there on the taking that off the table.
Right. There are certainly people now who are like, oh, I don't read the main Spawn title, but I do read Gunslinger. I do read whatever, Scorched or whatever, because they get a different flavor of kind of the character that they like, or a version of the character that they like. I know that Gunslinger is like a different guy.
Right, of course. But but like, they get Spawn. Right. It's still Spawn.
Still Spawn.
And I think that's what Todd's really going for with that line, is exactly that. So that even if you don't want to read the main Spawn title, but you want to read Spawn, you got King Spawn, you got Gunslinger, you got Monolith, you got Rat City, you got so many different things that take place in this world. I think that was something he tried to hammer home to us a lot. And I'm going to call back to that conversation over and over, just because it's the man's word itself.
Yeah. And I don't think he's shy about what he's trying to do. I was having an interesting conversation. Vanessa just listened to that episode, and she was like, at first she was like, well, it's almost like he could be more successful. And I was like, think about that for a second, though. He's kind of the most successful. He just gets to do whatever he wants to do. He's a multimillionaire. Yeah. And people don't always like what he's doing, but
I don't think he cares.
He doesn't.
I think
he doesn't
that's
care
literally not the point.
Not the point anymore. And she was like, yeah, I guess you're right. I guess his toys are his thing for the masses, but Spawn just kind of gets to be for him, even when he's not the one doing it, huh?
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
was like, right, because even when he's not the one actively writing it, he's still involved with the lettering, involved with the hiring, involved.
And I'm certain he's out there, they're pitching stuff to him, and he's going like, yeah, but maybe we do this. Yeah. It's also funny that Spider-Man comes up in that conversation for 2 reasons. One, tying directly to Todd McFarlane, which is he's really the creator that took Peter Parker and Mary Jane from like newlywed couple to being like an established married couple.
Mm-hmm.
I think because that's a huge part of Todd's life. It's how he relates to characters. It's a huge part of Spawn, wife guy Todd. And then for 10 years or so, that becomes the status quo of Spider-Man. Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and Mary Jane are married. They're together. They're the Clark Kent and Lois Lane of Marvel Comics, really.
Yeah.
But then, in the early 2000s, Marvel had this idea that he was becoming too static, that if he was married, younger fans wouldn't be able to relate to him anymore the way they did when he was a teenager. So they did the whole like one more day, brand new day reboot and all. And the thing is, since then, he's been more trapped in Amber than ever, because now it's the cycle of he can't be with Mary Jane, but we're forever going to be bringing them together, and then being like, and here's another fucking crazy, she's going to go to another alternate time dimension now, so she can't be with you. And it's like, you're doing it worse than if he was just still married to her.
I have a question for you with regards to Spider-Man that I think is relevant here, right? And I think that the Wanda of Spawn, right? Wanda and Spawn are obviously Peter Parker, Mary Jane in so many ways for this universe. We grew up with them basically being married, with Peter and MJ being married. However, we also had other versions of Spider-Man that were not the comics, like the animated series, where he's like in college, they're dating, but like there's a little bit more kind of like he's a little bit like less tied down. Let's put it that way, because they're not married, and that show ends in a crazy way where it never got finished.
Right. Well, it's getting
But
finished in a comic book now.
yeah, but what I was about to say is, do you think that it was just that we had different versions that we were able to sort of be like, oh yeah, in the comics, like right now he's married. So it's cool that like, they're just dating and sometimes they're broken up in the cartoon because I'm a smart person. I'm a smart child who can understand that I can hold these two ideas in my head at the same
Right.
time. And
we grew up in an era where the onset of like that kind of superhero media was new for most people. There wasn't really a narrative ongoing superhero cartoon like that until like X-Men and Batman the Animated Series that were in that mature vein, that were taking those elements from the comics and telling good stories with it. I'll put this to you, and we'll get back to the first page of this issue in a second. but I'll put it to you this way. It is very, very possible to be an adult Spider-Man reader right now, like can vote, can drink, who never read Spider-Man comics when Peter Parker and Mary Jane were together, and who is vociferously angry that they're not. Like, I'm not kidding. It is an inherited anger in fandom to be upset that Marvel won't let Peter Parker and Mary Jane be together. And part of it is, again, they're together in every other fucking thing.
One way or another,
always they're together in some version. Like even the non-Mary Jane MJ and Peter Parker are still MJ and Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Even in Spider-Verse, where Peter Parker's a side character, it's Mary Jane and Peter Parker.
Right.
So,
and that's like the tragedy of that first one anyway,
right.
is that's the target your heartstrings, is like, oh, this is what everybody wants. So it's going to be the sort of tragic backstory there.
Well, and also I think it's interesting that we've got Ultimate Spider-Man now where they are married and it's taking a different turn. I think Peter's about to die, but we'll see what happens. I think his son...
That never sticks for long.
I think his son is going to become Spider-Man.
Hell yeah, that's cool.
I mean, that's great. Whatever. Look, back to the first page of Hellspawn number 7. We start with the definition of metamorphosis, and then we get into this description of New York that does in fact feel like one of Todd McFarlane's like Spawn intros. The city never sleeps. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 months a year. A constantly changing mass of flesh and concrete. Change, ever present, stands as a monument to the power of will, as do several of its inhabitants. Not the most graceful dismount from the poetry of that there, but...
No.
This part, and also I think you're right that is also a Todd, because we're getting right into the stuff with Sam and Twitch, our fun guest characters. Sam and Twitch, who I love the way that Ashley Wood renders them. His Twitch is very expressionistic. It's awesome.
Yeah.
His Twitch
I don't think
looks
these
like
two
Warlock.
have ever looked... I don't think these two have ever looked better.
It's cool. It's a very Sienkiewicz rendering of Twitch there.
Absolutely.
Very Warlock, very Legion. They're confronting Mike Moran, who we discussed in the previous episode is the character of Miracle Man, but not because of weird legal stuff. We won't necessarily rehash it, but this character, Mike Moran, is a reporter who Sam and Twitch are confronting because at this point, I assume in the Sam and Twitch comic, which we haven't covered yet, they are investigating stuff that's going on in the department and facing backlash from the kind of thin blue line of it all. And they want him to spill the goods on his police informants so that they can kind of get the info they need to get some leverage, like they did before with the captain who, died and all that stuff. Kind of a game of cat and mouse that's been going on a long time.
I will call one thing out here, which is the lettering. It is not what we're used to from a Spawn book. However,
it's kind of similar to the previous Hellspawn issues in some ways.
Yeah, but also this is the way they do the lettering in the Sam and Twitch book.
It also looks a lot like in Simony, kind of that Euro style.
Yeah, kind of like So for anybody that's not reading along with these, there are no balloons. They're kind of like scribbles with like a line.
They're arrows and indicators.
Yeah, and there are slightly different fonts for Sam and Twitch.
I don't mind it. I mean, some of the like different fonts are a little busy, but I don't mind the style of the arrows rather than balloons, especially with this art. Like covering the art, you don't want huge balloons over it.
Agreed. But we get this really, so you know, they kind of head in, they see Mike Moran.
That splash page of Moran looking
cool.
over his shoulder at them. So good.
So cool. I love Twitch's crazy hair. Yeah, he looks like Warlock. He looks like Legion.
Yeah.
I love Sam's brow. His like really low brow. You can't see his eyes.
Just very good cartooning. Very in a book with a tradition of great cartooning.
Yeah. These designs also very much pass the silhouette test.
Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, a lot of this is told in silhouette,
right? And so very quickly, Wood's able to establish, hey, this is like the outline of this character, so now you won't really be lost, and we are not. Nope. And it is great.
It's moody. Even the kind of amber brownish color works really well here.
I think in
ways that it hasn't with more traditional looking art. I think it's great. It really sells the idea of the dive bar to me. Like it looks like you're looking through a beer bottle almost.
Yeah.
And it's just so great. The cartooning is great. Sam's face on the page where they're kind of confronting Moran. It's got the 2 repeated panels of him kind of smiling. I love his sort of like arrogant smile. And they're kind of telling him, you know, Sam says, without us, you ain't got a prayer of exposing anything more than a few cops that run a couple red lights. And they're basically trying to say, look, if you let us in on what you know and your sources about police corruption, we'll help you bust it wide open because they're circling the wagons tighter than ever. Moran is very reluctant, though. It's kind of funny. It ends with Moran saying, I'll think about it. Now, if you excuse me, gentlemen, I have things to do, and leaving. And Twitch says, think he'll bite? And Sam says, God, I hope not.
Which is just a fun, like, I think Sam's so tired at this point that he's like, man, I know that this is what we have to do, but it's going to make so much more work for us.
Yeah.
We cut to, we're welcomed to Wolfsham.
Wolfsheim?
Wolfsheim?
Well, okay, so Wolfsheim.
Population 0.
Wolfsheim is a band. It's a German goth band.
It is also the last name of Meyer Wolfsheim, character from The Great Gatsby, based on Arnold Rothstein, the famous crime boss.
Famous Jewish gangster behind the Black Sox scandal, which was about betting on baseball.
Hey, there we go. It all comes back to baseball.
Baseball.
But we get this gentleman whistling as he goes into like a shed that is obviously like
population 0.
Yeah, it's he goes into this shed that is obviously like a secret passageway to like an underground laboratory.
Dude, and this Mobius-esque
cool
drawing of him on the huge platform that's going down looks like a thing. It looks like Katsuhiro Otomo like backgrounds from Akira or something. It's a very like Euro manga. Oh, it's so good.
Feels like like Alien.
He does sci-fi so fucking cool.
Yeah.
Becomes such a great part of this whole book, this sequence, because this is Agent Damascus, right?
Yep.
Agent Damascus is going down into this secure facility with these high-tech guards where none other than Jason Wynn is being held. He is kind of strung up in this like chamber of like tubes and wires where he's screaming because if we recall from when he last encountered Spawn, Al Simmons showed up as Spawn, was like, I'm Al Simmons, you dumb bitch. The game is over. I'm sick of this. We are done. And he convinced, he like psychically projected into Jason Wynn's mind that Spawn had ripped off all of his skin, like completely flensed his skin.
Right.
And
So he's
Jason,
experiencing pain that like is not actually happening to him, but
it's like
he
a
thinks it
psychic.
is.
Yes, he's like
Yeah.
cursed to believe that all of his skin is gone. Basically, it's kind of hardcore. It was one of the most hardcore things Spawn has done to like an ongoing enemy yet, and so much more interesting than like killing Jason Wynn and sending him to hell, where he'd
Yeah.
become like the next hell guy, which is what you might expect might happen, you know?
Right.
But here we get to that little bit we kind of quoted at the beginning where Agent Damascus is trying to question him about Al Simmons. And he's like, Simmons ripped my skin off. And the guy's like, yeah, well, thanks, Mr. Wynn. That was a great help.
There's the other thing I see in this art is a little Peter Chung,
Mm,
who did Aeon Flux. And
I can see that. The
there's a little bit of
angularity
that.
of the faces and stuff.
They're like a little distorted in weird ways. And they look, he also storyboarded the entire intro of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon,
Hell yeah.
which
One of
is
the best of all time.
great. Like when I
One of
found
the
that out,
boats.
I was like, when I found that out, I was like, oh my God.
Him
no
and
wonder.
Chuck Lorre are a dynamite team for cartoon credit
Yeah,
sequences.
for real. So,
You know, I said it again and I'll reiterate it just a little bit.
you love being a turtle.
Absolutely, that's correct. You know, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Cowabunga. The I don't always love just taking an artist that is as nuanced and beautifully rendered and interesting and singular as Ashley Wood and just trying to like collage out
name
the
guys.
influences.
Yeah.
Again, we're doing that in this medium because this art is so hard to kind of describe any other way. It's beautiful and it doesn't look like anything else. At this point in this comic, this is maybe my favorite Spawn art outside of like Greg Capullo's like classic like core Spawn, and I get why people love it so much. You know what I mean? It's my favorite side quest art by a mile.
The other guy who it really reminds me of, and I not to keep doing this, but is Mike Huddleston, who also does this like very like mix of sort of graphic designy styles with more sort of anime and manga influenced things, like where you can like look at one page of his and he is almost kind of begging you to find the references, like not like one-to-one references, but just the like
but just to feel that tradition of art that he's drawing on.
Exactly.
I feel that same way here. We're also Ashley Wood is using some of those things as shorthand and visual language for us to bring us in and help us through some of his abstraction. Something that I think I want to point out, a thing that to me feels very just Ashley Wood, not the only artist to do this style, but I feel like an artist who really influenced this style in modern comics. That really kind of very thin, clairline, almost sort of texture. If you look on the panel here of Jason Wynn screaming.
Oh, where he's screaming, yeah.
That if you took out all the texture and color, the lines are just kind of very thrown in.
Mm-hmm. But not in like a sketchy 90s way that we were used to leading up to this. Right. There's a lot more clarity to them, and there's almost acting in those lines.
It feels like a big influence on an artist, like Giannis Milogiannis. If you've ever read his Old City Blues, it's a really great cyberpunk comic. Has that kind of like sketchy, but not the same kind. It's great. It's great.
And then I think also in the coloring, we're sort of getting this almost like zipatone texture in here. Dear listeners, this is going to be a long episode because we haven't really like dive as deeply into some of the art in these books, but the Hellspawn books and Ashley Wood's art just really begs us to stare at it.
In particular has so much just great stuff in it.
Here's the thing that I think is really interesting is that we talked a little bit about the flip in relationship between Bendis with Ashley Wood versus like Niles with Ashley Wood. And I think, and we throw Vibes comics around a lot, and the first 6 issues are much more sort of vibesy. However, where Niles is giving a more because the script is doing that, and so Ashley Wood's like, all right, cool, I just get to draw some like cool
and
shit.
I think that was also very much the mission statement, you know?
Totally make something different that looks exciting. with Niles' script, because there's a lot more like dialogue. There's a lot less space in a lot of ways. There's a lot asked of Ashley Wood, and I think having Todd write a scene as well kind of does this too, because it kind of, it's like, all right, well, we want these things to be in concert, right?
Right. You don't want to turn the next page and have it just feel like a fucking
A
different comic.
crazy clown face thing, right? A crazy splash page that is like very amorphous and weird.
We got a cool one
So
coming up though.
I know, but I do think that like what Wood is still doing is he goes, okay, Niles' script is not going to do the vibes in the same way that Bendis' script did, so I have to do the vibes, and so that's why we get like that the sort of Otomo where we're getting more of these panels that are calling to us to reflect and remember other styles of art and other kind of genres, because we are also going from horror to more sci-fi kind of stuff over these two issues. Still horror, it's still a horror book, but the sort of sci-fi noir element is really coming back in. Having Sam and Twitch is always going to bring the noir element back, but
And we're definitely getting the sci-fi right now. So we're cutting back to, quote, the alley. Steve Niles seems to go out of his way not to say Rat City, and I don't know if it's because he doesn't know the name yet or if he's just purposefully calling it the alley. But here in the alley, we get this so sick. Okay, Ashley Wood has kind of done this tradition of doing that like double page Spawn spread like this in every issue. So we've seen his Spawn evolve. This almost feels like an H.R. Giger, like look at his face, the way the bones are kind of inlaid in the mask, like the structure. Crazy. It's so hot. I
He's
fucking
like little skulls
love
on the ground
this.
next to him, the way he's hunched over.
This page, when I was a kid, I would have just tried to draw it over and over. Like that's what I did when I was young, learning to draw comics and stuff. Was I just would copy and copy and copy, and that's what you should do in your little sketchbooks. So here it says there will no longer be a division between body and suit. Like perception and faith, the Hellspawn grows and changes without effort, a supernatural organism adapting to survive and grow. We get these cool panels of his cape kind of wrapping around him. It says elements converge, an embryo reaching inward for definition. The Hellspawn's mind begins to crawl, controlled, calculated, feeling his way into the crevices dividing his body, mind, and soul. He is probing, adjusting. An impossible blend of organisms and supernatural energies combine to create the membrane that will be the vessel of his transformation. So basically, he's now in a cocoon state. It doesn't say spawns in a cocoon and show you like a really specific, but you see it, it's there. That metamorphosis definition in the beginning just helps us set the stage to contextualize that. And I like that if they're going to put that there, let it do a little heavy lifting.
Yeah. And I like this next little sequence where, while he's in his cocoon sort of gestating, he's reflecting and remembering his life and what led him here. And we're getting some narration that feels a lot more like Todd, where we are kind of getting exactly what we're seeing images of, but that's kind of okay.
It's kind of the point in this case.
There's a couple of things I would like to call out in the art. One, when we see the little baby version of him, that it looks like a hand is kind of coming up behind him. Yep. That when we see him standing there, working as a government assassin, we see sort of the devil behind him as the shadow. I also like then he burned for half a decade.
That whole monologue is kind of great.
It is really cool. It is really, really cool. It does catch you up if you weren't aware, although I don't know why you'd just be picking up Hellspawn number 7.
There's something that it also reveals some new stuff to us, which is, first off, not necessarily the first time it said that the devil had his eyes on Al Simmons since birth. That's been kind of hinted at and said before, that he's long been tagged as a person who could be part of this whole, affair between heaven and hell. But here it says, even as an infant, the devil's eyes were on him. The darkness was always present, waiting, scouting for that first shred of hatred, that first drop of blood. Hardly 7 years old the first time he felt rage, the first time he drew blood. A teasing taunt was all it took. Hell's eyes watched it as he tore at the teaser's eyes and raked his face against the craggy street. First rage, first blood. It felt good. And we've never really heard the story of like Al Simmons' first blood before, and like that even as a kid he was violent. We haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
There's been implications of his dark side, but I kind of like that they're not just that Steve Niles and Ashley Wood here are not letting it die on the vine that he was just a world famous government assassin and that that's just a nobly heroic thing. Not to say that Todd dismisses these implications, it's there sort of,
Yeah.
but his writing is more super heroic. It's a little more like mainstream comic focused,
Yeah.
where you're not maybe getting into these issues. Hellspawn feels like the place where they're like, let's talk about it a little.
Well, and the only time we did get a sort of indication that Al was a pretty bad, or like Al was a bad guy or had the capacity to be a bad guy, is a pretty unfortunate memory that he hit Wanda.
And then we find out later that it wasn't even a real memory.
Yeah, which then also kind of makes this one of those things where it's like, okay, was because he was identified early on, did the devil sort of like inch him in this? Did he encourage some of this?
Did he catch the devil's eye, or did he catch the devil's influence? You know,
right? Or is it a little bit of both? You know, like, you know, does I think that's interesting. I like the ambiguity. I don't like when we first found out when he hit Wanda that existed as part of his story, because at that time that book wanted to be a superhero book. But this works a lot better as a sort of ambiguous, there are bad things in the world and maybe good people sometimes do bad things, but maybe good people just have the capacity to do bad things, and that's what can be taken advantage of.
And maybe also good and bad don't matter at this scale in this
Which
way.
We are also learning is kind of the case.
This whole sequence of behold the wasteland, behold the man who rose beyond the flesh and forcibly transformed the metaphysical universe, the throne, the prize for slaughtering an arrogant master. That whole sequence with like, I take this to be Al Simmons's like kind of spirit in the Malbolgia throne. Like you see the skull of Malbolgia burning in the like image of the throne. This is very like the Cell, like very Tarsim Singh, weirdly dreamlike, Goya-esque, like nightmares of these colossal shadow figures. Love this. And also an undeniable Mike Mignola influence that I think really comes into this whole next sequence strongly. The monkey that's like holding the crown, it's so good. And then you get this like Spawn with like the huge like gaping maw in his chest, and like the ravens. It's so good. It just rules so hard. There's a little bit of that, like, you almost get a little bit of like Chris Bocciolo kind of buying into this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's so
There's a little
good.
like Edward Gorey, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too,
oh, this like whole sequence next of like the house.
This is where it gets like the most Mignola to me. Even the lettering gets a little Mignola-y, or Hellboy-y. I'm not sure if a lot of Comicraft probably did some of those, so it's a similar team. But this whole sequence is so cool.
Spawn's mask and face, the way it's rendered in shadow, fucking so good.
And you know, I like also that this is more introspection than we've gotten from Al. I know it's not direct introspection, right? Because it's not him thinking to himself exactly. We are having an omniscient narrator kind of tell us about his thoughts, but it is a really cool way to explore what's going on during the transformation, because we've seen him transform one time before. We've seen a big cocoon for Spawn, you know. But I really love as he entered. I love the haunted house page. I would, I would buy that page.
So good.
In a set. That's the one I would have a poster of. It's
with
so
Spawn's
cool.
face inset. Oh, so good.
So cool.
The fucking like shadows in the walls as he's going up through this sort of like tower of his like own hellish mind or whatever. He says, "I can feel you. Show yourself." And it says, "Behold the future." And we get a very Nosferatu, like classic Max Schreck. "I will come as Legion, Hellspawn. You will swim in the blood of my victims." Very similar to language from Nosferatu as well.
Yeah.
I will watch the only living thing you love die in your hands. And I suppose that's Wanda there or someone.
I
I don't
don't know.
know.
It's tough because she's got like
Tattoos,
tattoos. I
but
don't know if
maybe
she's
that's not who he loves yet.
that's yeah. I'm not sure who that's
Because
technically
there's
supposed
also
to
a
be.
person below her, like another guy below her there. So it's a weird, interesting
And
vision.
she's like holding like it almost looks like a crystal ball. I think it's just her hair.
Yeah, but she's got
It's
her
weird.
hands out. She
Yeah, it's
looks like she
weird.
should be holding something, her titty out. Um, but we see Spawn kind of opening from the cocoon. The cocoon opening sequence so cool because we get the inverse of the panels from before.
I took this to be like Nosferatu's like latest capture.
That's very possible. Yeah,
Not it's that it doesn't actually have to do anything with like it has nothing to do with Al specifically because it could have just been Wanda, and if it was Wanda, that would be very scary.
right.
But I like it. I think early on because he says, "Oh, it's like a movie that I watched once,"
Yeah, that's
or that's
true.
like in the narration. I think it's just the manifestation of the movie, and this is just the girl in the movie.
Fair enough. And it's his vision relating to that. I will say, I fucking love this Nosferatu-ish rendering. I grew up playing Vampire the Masquerade. One of the
Hell yeah.
first role-playing games I got super deep into. Love it still to this day. A lot of the art in that Guy Davis art, in fact, Guy Davis,
Hmm.
I'm not actually sure how he pronounces it. Guy Davis, one of my favorite monster and horror artists of all time. You can see some of his work in here too.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot of that art, and this really calls back to that to me. I love the sequence we get next of Spawn taking that vision and bursting out of the cocoon. It's the inverse of the panels from the page where he's going into it, but instead of red, they're blue, and you get this like weird, eerie green energy and smoke as he's coming out of this cocoon. And the bottom panel there, that looks like a Mobius drawing. That looks like some of the like storyboards for Alien. And I
Yep.
hate being like this, but like it's there in the art in a beautiful way, not in a like rip off or way that makes it seem
No.
like cheap, but in a way that's like it's speaking a language.
Plus, it has these like pale yellows and greens in the colors that are very
Mm-hmm.
subtle. The way the smoke kind of comes off of Spawn as he's like emerging from this cocoon. Also, something emerging from a cocoon is always going to, at this point, make you think of Alien, right? Like,
Well, and even if you look at the
especially a
environment,
monster.
that
Yeah,
specifically looks like the poster for Alien in a
yeah,
lot of ways, in a cool way.
100%.
I love it. One of my favorites. This guy's just hitting on all my favorite stuff. The splash page we get next of Spawn,
Yeah.
so fucking sick. Where he's got the like, it almost looks like a Magneto shape with his fucking
Hmm.
mask, the way he draws it, and his cape now looks like raven's feathers, and it says, "And the raven sang reborn," and there are sure enough like ravens like almost crowning his head. Such a cool look. I want to see this kind of come into the main book in a way. I know we've seen Spawn with wings, both in the art and as something to come or whatever. But like this, like the feathered raven cape, such a cool evolution of the concept of his look.
Raven Spawn is something that we will see again. However, it will not be Al.
Right.
And we'll get there when we get there. It's going to be a little while, but Ravenspawn, super fucking cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
It's
it is.
obviously, the way that Ashley Wood is rendering him here, but
Oh, he also looks like Sauron.
yeah, I could see
That
that.
big, like with the big gauntlets and the so cool.
Yeah.
Incredible. Also, I love that Ashley Wood's like, nah, these hook chains. That's what it's all about. Normal
Yeah.
chains not enough. Love the hook chains.
Yeah, and they're like
Makes him
hanging
seem
from
much
his
more
belt.
lethal. And they're
Yeah,
more like
more horror
talons.
movie.
Yeah, it's cool. We cut to a bus. Some lady's getting off the bus, and she's looking for someone. And we are going to
Give this little Stan Lee cameo as the bus driver, JK.
good luck finding your friend, miss. But
Excelsior.
and then we're going to cut to looks like Mike Moran again,
Yeah, she says,
right?
I'm not the one who needs, he says, good luck finding your friend. She says, I'm not the one who needs luck, and he isn't my friend. And yeah, we get Mike Moran. He's calling someone on the phone saying how nice it is, that he's staying in a place with cable and room service, and whoever he's talking to should come visit. But the phone is abruptly hung up and the call ends, and that's it. He's looking at something labeled Atomic Records, which I think has this woman on it. Yeah,
Is it the same woman that's looking for him? Is that what we're to believe?
I'm not sure. It could be.
Okay. It's not super clear from the art. So,
Yeah. One thing that Ashley Wood is not necessarily the best at in that way is like selling the same character in like different modes, unless it's
yeah,
like Spawn where the elements are obvious.
agreed. That will lead us to Hellspawn number 8.
Hit me with those credits, my friend.
Hellspawn number 8. Big ol' Cygor on the cover.
Hell yeah.
Todd McFarlane Image Comics present The Suicide Gate. Story by Steve Niles. Art and cover by Ashley Wood. Lettering by Richard Starkings and Comic Crafts Oscar Gungora. So no Todd McFarlane on this one, except overseeing things, obviously. But
I do want to give a quick trigger warning, as is important. This story does deal in a very crucial way with self-harm. We won't harp on it, but we will have to discuss it. And you know, we'll tag it when it's about to come up. But just want to put that out there. It's called The Suicide Gate for a reason.
I'll also say that like there's a lot of like it's very implied for the most part, but like things aren't good for our guy Cygor.
No, poor Mike
So
Kaninsky, as we're reminded.
yeah, so we're gonna jump right into it, and we see a scalpel and
These weird horror movie doctor hands with
yeah,
nightmarish
which they
surgery
look
tools.
cool,
This
but
whole sequence, fucking sick.
yeah,
Like the way the doctors all look so weird. They look like Shy Guys from Mario 2 with their little masks and
like super
stuff.
evil
Like
Shy Guys.
just really horror movie Clive Barker-y kind of doctors.
Yeah,
Like this has a very Hellraiser feel, where they're like trying to revive Cygor because, as we recall, a couple issues ago, in I think it was Bendis's last issue, Cygor was subdued by a bunch of agents in the desert who basically shot him full of holes.
yep,
With I think it was a helicopter or something.
yeah, and we're gonna see that again as well. We kind of get to we'll get to see that a little later. Okay, so these a lot again. It's pretty implied, but it's understood through the coloring that there's like a lot of blood happening. They keep losing Cygor along the way. Oh, but then they bring him back, and they've done something to him.
They finally stabilize him. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the craziest things about this design for Cygor, and it's my favorite little bit, are the screws in
His knuckles.
His knuckles, they're crazy. He's less cyborgy and more kind of like Planet of the Apes. Like,
the cyborg parts are a little more impressionized, but
yeah,
this double page spread of him running from the Jeep with the gun and the helicopter just fucking rules so hard. This rendering of Cygor is my favorite one yet. I just think it's so good.
Really cool.
It's so sick. Everything about it I love. And we get this whole sequence of him taking out the Jeep, but then the weird looking like science soldiers in the helicopter with this super cool looking gun take him out. And so here's where we're going to take a little diversion. We get a little bit of history on Cygor in this page. Here's what it says, okay? Dr. Wilhelm, the USSG, the Institute of Biological, Racial, and Evolutionary Research, Berlin, the ethics of using medical data from Nazi experiments. Early in power, the national science groups began research of race and genetic experiments to refine the masker race and determine the cause of defects. Dr. Joseph Mengele, research on humans and animals exemplifies the quest for the genetic studies. early in the Nazi regime, national science groups, blah, 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 blah. It says the experiments yielded few positive results, mostly deaths and dangerously tragic mishaps. One of these experiments yielded a nightmare called Cygor. Today, the whereabouts of Cygor are unknown. Now, I'm going to say a couple things here. One, Cygor's origin, that's a very condensed telling because, as I recall, they were like experiments that took place over like 50 years or something.
But also that Michael Kaninsky was a friend of Al Simmons.
Yes.
So either there have been
we
a couple
know that it was, I think that's what it was, is that there was a Cygor project because they tried to do it over and over until they finally got it right with Kaninsky. Now, here's what I want to say. This addresses a couple things about, Nazi research into genetics and stuff. First off, just to clarify, for anyone who doesn't know, whether you rightfully and righteously hate the fucking Nazis or not, you may not realize that all of their experiments were garbage. They were just torture. They had no scientific basis. They had nothing of merit. There's a reason we don't take, I don't think, any experiments. There may be like one or two things where we've learned something about barometric pressure research, but for the most part, through torture, by the way, and the murder of Jewish people in the Holocaust, through genocide, it's all nonsense. Now, there were Nazi scientists that were brought to the U.S. as part of Project Paperclip. Thousands of them, by the way. Some people have a perception that it was like Werner von Braun and his couple buds. But no, thousands, something like 2,500, almost 2,500 or more Nazi scientists were brought to America, largely in the Texas region around Houston because of, where the NASA headquarters was. The USSR also brought over that many, thousands of Nazi scientists, but they were all rocketry scientists for the most part because of the space race. And everything that they had learned from their time in the Nazis was, again, built on the back of enslaved labor and used primarily for weapons of war.
Yeah.
Joseph Mengele, it brings up here. Look, I'm just correcting all this stuff not because this is wrong or bad. It's not endorsing these things or saying they're good. It's saying they're bad.
It is actually bringing up like, is this ethical? And the answer is
it's no. It also talks about Joseph Mengele, and I wanted to spell the biggest myth about Joseph Mengele. Not that he was in any way a good person. He was one of the worst human beings ever to live. He relished the duty of determining who went to the death camps and who went to the work camps. Didn't do a lot of experiments of his own. He did some, but he was actually a facilitator. A lot of the experiments that he gets credited with participating in were done by others. It was a network of scientists around Germany that he was supplying human beings to as guinea pigs. So he gets connected to a lot of these things. He's not a grim specter of Nazi super science. I think that's the myth that's worth dispelling.
Okay. Yeah, I think that for the story's sake, I think you throw his name in there because it's one of the names people know.
But it's exactly. No. Well, it's perpetuating that idea because of that. And it's just a pet thing of mine that, like, yes, one of the most evil and worst human beings to ever live, the angel of death of the, of Auschwitz, and I believe Dachau as well, for sure, at different times. But not this mythical figure. There's a lot of mythologizing around Nazis as like supervillains with mega science and these creepy experiments. And a lot of that is just hyped up myth that distracts from real tragedy that took place as a part of genocide. And there is a tradition of bringing those things into sci-fi and into comics. It's not unique to this issue or anything.
We've talked about it before.
It's basically as long as there have been superheroes.
Yeah.
But in today's day and age, where a lot of these Nazi ideals and just frankly Nazis are surfacing again, I think it's important to take, 5 minutes and say, hey, there's no need to mythologize these guys as supervillains. They're just basically shitty people.
Yeah, there's a banality to their evil on some level that, I think Spielberg talked about it after making Indiana Jones. Like, the Indiana Jones movies are super fun, and it's great to see Nazis get punched in the face. Then he makes Schindler's List, and he's like, can't do it again. Can't do the Nazis as villains in like a cartoony way ever again, because I took it so seriously and I really lived with that story, and I can't can't trivialize them anymore, because they are kind of the best villains, in the sense that they are so evil that you never feel bad about what happens to a Nazi, which is good. But I can understand, like, there's a little bit of frustration, even in a story like this, that we sort of are trivializing the real world impact. Like,
well, there's even issues with, okay, so you use the phrase the banality of evil, which was coined by Hannah Arendt in the book Eichmann in Jerusalem, which was about the trial of Adolf Eichmann, who is basically one of the chief administrators of the Holocaust. And she described Adolf Eichmann using the term the banality of evil. This is something that actually this is something, this topic just came up on the podcast Behind the Bastards a little while ago. And like, it is a double-edged sword when you talk about things like this, because some of these Nazis were in some ways cartoonishly evil villains, but the banality of their evil is it was done by just real men.
That's what I mean. But that's what I mean, is that they are real people. That,
exactly,
like you're saying,
exactly. I'm just pointing out, like, where that phrase comes from and how it's like,
and normal, and like you're saying, they are not supernatural. They are not. They're not particularly interesting.
There's just a lot of, like, Adolf Hitler survived and was cloned, and like Joseph Mengele, and it's like, I bristle at that a little bit now. I'm not holding it against this, but just in the way that, like, I think it's worth pointing out, a lot of the mythologizing around it is bullshit. The evil of it is that it was murder and genocide, and that it was effectively also chattel slavery and human experimentation. Anyway, cutting back to Cygor, the cybernetic Nazi gorilla of it all, you see why I think it's kind of...
Cygor is not a Nazi.
No, he's not, but he's a Nazi experiment.
He's a tool of the Nazis at this point. I will say, if we're going to get to the art real quick...
as well.
Well, yeah. Yes, exactly. He's a victim. And I guess he's two victims, because I guess the gorilla is a victim.
That's true.
Also. Cool looking gorilla. The normal gorilla.
Being, yeah.
Really like that. The Mignola's right here, kind of where we get to see Mike Kaninsky. Brutal watching him get shot in the head. That's a lot.
But a great rendering of the drawing.
And this panel with the sort of soldier in the foreground saying that we got Cygor. That's a great panel. I don't love what it's depicting, but
they look like stormtroopers as well too.
That is intentional. And then we're going to cut back to New York City. We're going to cut to the alley. Dark, forbidding, a black hole within the shadows, a cold, lonely stretch of despair where only the dead and the damned venture. Yeah, I don't really know why he doesn't call it Rat City. Is it because maybe Rat City just seems a little too silly and they want to keep the...
Maybe, or maybe he's not counting on people to know what Rat City is necessarily.
Maybe that's just, jargony, so you just avoid it.
But you got two people trying to make their way into Spawn's alleys, kind of on a dare. It's this guy and this girl. The guy's abusing the girl here, trying to bring her into the alleys further. Spawn is watching over them. Love this splash page of Spawn sitting on top of the chimney with his cape,
so
billowing. Kind of a very Batman-ish take in a way that we don't usually necessarily get one-to-one. So the guy's abusing the girl. And
they're getting chased by the cops. Like that's what we're just sort of understanding.
Right. They run into there away from the cops. Oh, he's wearing a Ramones shirt.
Yeah.
My favorite, the Ramones, the greatest rock band of all time. He is like, come on, lighten up. He hits her, which is really inappropriate. I guess I should have trigger warning that too, but I'm sorry. There's violence against this person here. He starts teasing her, trying to get her to have sex with him, and she's like, no fucking way, and runs off. At the same time, Spawn is watching and decides, you know what? I'm going to fuck up this kid's shit. It says he can taste the depravity, smell the murder in the boy's heart. Some choices are easier than others. This one will amount to nothing but unpleasant memories for others.
And I
And
love that his only two words are hello,
yeah,
goodbye.
yeah, he says hello. That panel of like Spawn's distorted face, like kind of materializing, fucking sick.
Yeah.
And yeah, goodbye. And the guy's like, no, 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 no. And as we've seen before, a horde of shadowy vermin erupts from Spawn's cape and devours him. They sense the evil, they hunger for it, they crave it. The pain is unbearable, but it doesn't last long. They're hungry tonight. That panel of his hand getting swept up in it, and then the like creepy, the whole page of just the creepy, smeary, bloody shadows, like kind of forming back into like this very skullish, devilish Spawn.
Well, and that's the thing too, is I do think that what we are to understand from Spawn's transformation is, I think, even though we've seen him reject Al Simmons before, he's never really embraced his hellish nature
It did
in
say in the
this.
previous issue, another layer of his humanity is stripped away.
Right, right. And so I think like we are to believe like that he is still good in some way, but he's using his powers in a much more violent way. That in even
Yeah,
this rendering of Spawn in the red is like he looks scarier than we've ever seen him before.
he
Like
looks
there's
devilish. Like his
yeah.
makeup almost looked like horns. Makeup,
Uh,
his mask, his makeup.
and we're told like all the things that won't happen now, who will not be murdered, and houses that won't get robbed, and
Yeah.
people who won't be abused, and we get
Says
this
17 people won't be mugged, 8 homes won't be robbed, 6 women won't be abused, 4 innocent victims will not be murdered. All in all, a good, clean death. This page that says that,
so cool.
so Mignola, though, with the foreground skull and the chains. This is a very interesting rendering of Spawn that's kind of different with the hood.
The hood
We
instead
almost
of
never see
we usually get the
collar. Yeah.
and so the hood is really new. The hood, and also we're not seeing, with now that Malbolge is dead, we're not seeing that M.
That's interesting.
We're seeing more of this like different kind of collar going on.
Yeah,
That I think is
it's
really
almost like
interesting.
the way he draws it, almost like feathers. It's like,
Yeah.
it's cool. So we cut back to this surgery room. This whole sequence is so creepy again, with like the ball
Yeah.
peen hammer. His chest all cut open with the bolts. It says the implant is operational. The body seems to be accepting it. His vitals are good. And then we see this like very dark panel at the very end of a close up on Cygor's eyes as Agent Damascus is like, leave us alone.
I really like the drawings on these couple of pages as he's explaining the implant to Kaminsky and basically telling him that like, I control you now. You work for us. You're going to
Right.
do whatever we want you to do. And if you don't, it's going to be so much worse for you than everything that happened. It will be worse for you than the 100 soldiers we just sent after you with machine guns and tanks and helicopters. And it's all because we put this thing into your head.
And they kind of trigger like the pain or whatever to show how bad it is. Another great fucking drawing of Cygor.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Oh god, so sick.
Yeah. And I like, again, the little screw on the side of his head.
Yes.
You know what it is? I think that Ashley Wood is grounding this in a certain way that we really just never got from Capullo or from McFarlane's art in the main title. Like overt kill, and we do see some of this in Dwayne Turner's art in Curse of the Spawn, because I do think that Dwayne Turner gets like a little bit closer to this, but there is I think that Ashley Wood is really keying in on like, yeah, seeing like the cybernetic stuff when it doesn't look real doesn't trigger like an emotional response from you as a reader.
Right.
But imagine just having a screw screwed into your head.
It's
Like
so
that's
fucking weird.
yeah. That like you understand that a little bit different if you've like had to screw a board together. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's a physical sort of response that you have to it that I think is really, really good. That's the kind of thing that's really hard to communicate through art sometimes, and I think that's what I mean about him being able to communicate the vibes in a very more in a much more visceral way that's not necessarily in the script, that's not necessarily in the words that we're reading. And that's kind of the difference between the dynamic that he has with Niles versus Bendis.
I'm going back and looking at some of the art from previous issues because I'm looking for a specific note here, but I can really see how his work has evolved just through these issues. What I was looking to see is if the girl who dies by suicide is
At the
the same
beginning, it's the
girl
same
as
girl here.
Eden. I
I
can't
think they
remember
just,
that girl's name.
I think they just look the same. They're different.
I think you're right.
I think they just look kind of the same.
I
So
think
I
her
was
name
also,
was Marie, if I recall correctly.
it might have been.
Yeah.
But I think that what we're seeing is a fairly young artist really pushing themselves to an absolute limit, really metabolizing so many of their influences and spitting something out that is referential without being straight up copies. And it's really this is like a pretty, again, I keep saying visceral, but that really feels like the word to describe, especially these Psychor sequences.
There's a little more hard line and a little more structure than there was in the Bendis issues. We're almost at the end of the Cygor issue. What happens next is we learn what happens to Eden, who is the woman who Jimmy, who spawns nightmare creatures devoured, was abusing. Says, actions dictate history. Jimmy would have come after Eden. He would have slapped her around for a while. They would have made up eventually and shared a rock, presumably crack, before falling into a stupor until morning. But Jimmy won't be coming home. Not this time. There will be no beating. There will be no stupor. There will be no mourning. And there will be nobody home to stop her. There will only be dying, death, loss, and opportunity. Now 2 are dead, and a gate has been opened. And a Hellspawn will live to regret the choices he has made. And that's where the issue ends. It ends on this splash page of this woman, Eden. And here's the trigger warning, okay? Because we need to discuss the splash page. We just do. And it is going to involve description of self-harm. If you don't want to hear, I'm not going to get like gnarly graphic, but if you don't want to hear a fairly graphic discussion of an important page in this comic, it's cool. You heard what it results in. Feel free to skip ahead.
Yeah.
That said, I'm so conflicted about this page because on one hand, it is a classic kind of violent horror image to see someone dead in a bathtub of blood with the razor like by the floor, right? And the way it's rendered doesn't bother me. I like the way it's rendered on some level. I like the water I like the red of the water. I like the texture of it. I'm looking back to something now real quick. Okay. She has a tattoo on her arm. I was checking to see if it was the same tattoo of the woman in the Nosferatu page. It's not.
No.
What I take issue with here is it's very sexualized.
Yeah.
She's got the TNA pose going on, floating in the water in a way that is totally unnecessary. I defended some use of sexualized imagery in relation to the death of Angela in the previous episode because of the artistic, what I felt and still feel was the artistic license and merit of combining those notions in that way, in that moment, with those specific characters. Here, it feels unnecessary.
It feels lurid in a way that we haven't really gotten before from Ashley Wood.
Like her face floating in the water would have been
more than enough.
Just as effective.
Especially for a character that the narrative's not really kind to.
No.
Now, the suicide gates are something that like are going to be important. You know,
right.
This page ends with
it's a mythos. It's a thing that's being added to the mythos here.
Right. You know, a Hellspawn will live to regret the choices he's made. Okay, great. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction kind of thing. The metamorphosis that we read about in the beginning of Shed is not just Spawn, it is how these forces have
Right.
changed over time. What happens when, I think that whole sequence with the throne is completely metaphorical. He's not taken the throne, he's rejected that. What does that mean now? Where hell doesn't have a steward, kind of, where these forces
Right.
don't have something guiding them, even if the thing that was guiding them was this sort of like ridiculous fight with heaven that Al does not subscribe to, that Spawn does not subscribe to. Like, what is he opening Earth up to by allowing that seat to not be filled, or by leaving that seat open? You know, in a way, he's almost like the Grail Knight. Like, it almost feels like he's a Grail Knight, right? That
Right.
he's supposed to sit there forever to make sure that nothing worse happens. And this is we're 8 issues in, and we've had a lot of self-harm in these issues, and I understand that it is the kind of thing that is really grisly. But I said this in the first 2 issues, and I think it still does remain true, is that it is sort of like a teenager's version of what they think is like really adult.
Well, and also in the 90s, it was something that was like, we're finally talking about that this exists even.
Yeah, and
It
for a
was,
book also that doesn't have a lot of female characters to begin with, it just feels like cool. Every time that we see a woman, she's here to die. She's here
even
to be punished.
Angela. No, I'm not saying Angela's death wasn't earned or cool or dramatic or whatever,
Yeah,
but even Angela, the heroic woman who
right,
is like a hero in the book, was killed.
right. And in that case, kind of to spur Spawn on to his next thing, so
Right.
she
I'm
doesn't
not.
totally get fridged because I don't
And there's
really.
other complications with the
Yeah,
character, etc. But I loved the character and would be happier if she had continued on
yeah,
in
me
this
too,
universe,
me too.
So it
But
just
yeah,
seems like a needless rendering of how this is presented. It crosses a weird line for me between like, it just feels like, again, I use this word like 5 times now, but it feels like a needless sexualization
yeah, I agree.
of an image that is already horrifying on its
especially
own
for
merit.
especially for a character that is easy to read as like 17 years old. It
There's no
feels,
telling how old she might be. I
yeah,
took
it
her as
feels,
maybe early 20s, but
yeah,
like,
still
it's
feels,
still
she's like
violence against young women is not like just like a kind of like a thing that that is just rarely sprinkled through our media.
yeah, yeah. So, well, that's been 2 issues of Hellspawn. We do have some letters. If you have no thoughts before we get there, we do final thoughts
Yeah,
after.
we'll do final thoughts when
Um,
you're after you're done.
okay, cool. So we're going to get into the post-mortem, and we have a couple of letters. Get into issue number 7. All right, so it says, "Hey Todd, Hellspawn. It's about time. I knew it had potential. It was visceral, palatable, that first issue, but left a lot of people, including me, see letters page from issue 2. I'm Preacher, wanting more. So we got a follow up."
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I still don't care for the visuals in issue 1, and the story didn't seem there quite yet, but you could taste it in the air. Issue 2 was amazing. Ashley's style has settled in a bit, and now he's creating images that are disturbing, dark, but tell the story very well. There were times when a picture was used over and over, but it didn't seem so intrusive this time around. Bendis seems to really hit it hard with this issue. Nothing was contrived. It flowed at the proper pacing and was downright creepy. Good stuff. I felt just like Al, wanted my questions answered, wanting to pound in Clown's skull. Don't work so well, huh, Al? Just to get answers to why. Issue 3 ebbed a bit with some more story buildup. We know something is going to happen to the talk show guest now, don't we? Who's it going to be is the question, Spawn or Clown? It was my second favorite cover next to issue number 1. The only questions are to the actual battle between Spawn and Clown. At some point, knowing that blowing this guy's head off does no good, I would quit. Maybe if it made either character go away for a while, it would give more purpose to their battles. Didn't these letters writers have to figure it out? Do you want Clown to be around? Do you not want Clown to be around? Clown's been gone
Well,
for
he
a while.
was gone for a long
Yeah.
time before he returned here. I will say I agree with the sentiment, though, that the issues just get better and better, and the art gets more and more finely crafted and honed into, I think, what Ashley Wood is aiming for with this comic. And it's awesome. Like, it continues to fulfill my hell yeah, that kicks ass quotient in a way that is very different from the classic Spawn.
Yeah. Well, Patrick J. Clark continues. Issue number 4 brought the tide in. Wow. I still believe Hellspawn would kick major butt as an arc at a time book. Bendis' whole story in one book, then Niles' story as another book. But that's okay, because what I do know is probably one of the things Bendis and Wood wanted you to do in the beginning. Read 1 to 3 all over again and end with 4. It works really well that way. Issue 4 works pretty well as a single story, but I still believe in rereading the entire thing to make it all clear. And man, the visuals rock this time around.
Hell yeah.
After reading it, I went back to the front inside cover to check out the creative team. I always read the book first, then see who created it. Just something I do. That's weird. It's on the first page is the credits. And notice
movies do it the other way, so maybe it's that kind of thing.
That's true. I noticed the addition of Bill Sienkiewicz as the inker, and wow, his inks made Ashley's work even better. Please keep Bill as the inker.
Well,
story was very good. Nothing seemed out of place, but the KKK lynching reminded me of a Spawn story from the past. Keep it up, Todd McFarlane Productions. You got something good going. The only fear I have right now is that I may forget to buy the regular version of Spawn because Hellspawn is getting that good. So that was nice. And Todd says, thank you for your letter, Patrick. Given an overview of the comic book as a whole, I think you stated very clearly that some of the issues are interconnected. First 5 issues that Brian Bendis wrote read a lot better if you link them all up together. You'll also find that in the Sam and Twitch story arcs Brian wrote, although individually entertaining, they have a lot more power and impact when you have the time to read them all in one sitting. As for the artwork, Ashley Wood is still trying to find the best footing on the Spawn character to present him in what is the right amount of pen and ink and painting. And that is one thing. This is a lot more traditional, as opposed to the paints that we get in those early issues.
Right. Like I said, a little more hard line, a little more definition.
Yeah. As the current story arc winds down, you'll see that we're going to be more specific about some of the story outlines that are coming, which include some of the characters of the classic Spawn comic book making their appearances in this title. This Hellspawn book gives us a new venue as we try to tighten up some of the loose ends that are floating around out there, some from this book, some from the main Spawn comic book. We're always looking for better and smarter ways to present our comic books to the public. I appreciate your overview of it. Make sure you keep giving us your opinions as we take them all into account as we keep trying to push this book further and further in a more sophisticated direction. Continue to watch the new stories that are coming up and send us your feedback.
I think that's a great letter and a great response. Honestly, it's just more evidence that something Todd, I think, has said before in a lot of these letter columns is like, if you're reading a comic and you're like, who's that? What's this? What is that? You should just keep reading the comic because the questions are probably the point. Wanting those answers is the point, to keep reading and get the answers. So I also agree that Hellspawn really works in terms of like it worked for us as it went on, and the story really congealed a lot more as we read through it.
Feels like it's like coming into focus, and it's interesting because the visuals are very much doing that as well.
Right.
Especially from that first issue where things are like almost like blown out. You're not totally sure what you're looking at. They got this more painterly like feel.
There's
to
a
them.
lot of just abstract backgrounds more than anything else.
And then suddenly we're kind of like zooming in, and things are really coming, like shapes are appearing and characters are appearing in ways that we didn't expect necessarily. In issue 8, it says, hey, Steve. Okay, I might be a little stunned by what happened in issue number 7, so could you please help me or at least agree with me so I know I'm not reading things incorrectly? Is Spawn the ruler of hell now? Did he finally give in? I know it's right in front of my face, but could somebody confirm so I know I'm on the right track? This is from Curse of the Spawn number 1 from the Spawn.com message board. Steve Niles says, you're not going crazy. A lot happened in that issue. Spawn is, for lack of a better term, the rightful heir to the throne that Malbolgia occupied. He is the heir because he killed Malbolgia. But, here's my big but, Spawn does not want to rule
Here's
anything,
my big but.
let alone hell. Spawn doesn't want any part of heaven or hell or the war they've been fighting. He's beginning to realize there are alternatives, that he has more control than he thought before. Where this knowledge leads will all be coming out in the very near future. Thanks for writing. Next one from Mark E. Douglas is, hey, Steve, here's the question. I was just wondering, how long is this transformation of Spawn into the Raven going to last? I must say the new look is awesome, but I was just curious. So he says, the new look goes back to something I've said before. Spawn is an ever-changing character with unlimited potential for inner and outer growth. His look reflects his place in the world. In Hellspawn, the world is much darker, much harsher, hence the current look. But I don't want any of you thinking that this is all my idea. Ashley Wood is as much a part of the new look as anyone. We have a true 50-50 partnership when it comes to Hellspawn. Many of the things that you see on the pages started as one scripted idea, maybe a location or the look of a character, but once Ashley does his magic, the whole thrust of the original scene has changed. Ashley is not one of those artists who just follows the writer blindly. He's an active part in every panel, page, and story. And as a writer who enjoys collaboration, I love his energy and input. There will be many changes coming for Spawn in the pages of Hellspawn, both visual and in the storyline, and I'm as anxious as anyone to see what they are.
Yeah, I don't think Ashley was the kind of artist that you're giving like Alan Moore style, like
No.
needs to have these details. You can't rely on him for that, and you don't hire him for that.
No, you hire him to be like, here's half an idea.
You hire him for this.
I want you to finish that half of an idea that I have.
Yeah, turn it into a dreamscape or whatever. Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I think that it's cool that he's got his own like Hellspawn look for right now, the Raven look. We just talked about how sick that is. So yeah, leading into final thoughts, I feel like I'm really encouraged by the direction of these two issues. They were fun. I think they would have kind of felt like, okay, if it was just the main Spawn title with like regular, the classic, more contemporary superhero-ish art we usually get.
Yeah, I agree.
Not to say anything's wrong with that art. I love that style generally. That's usually what I go for. But I think that I lost my train of thought slightly. I forget what I was saying. Something about him.
You were saying if these issues were in the main Spawn book.
Oh, they probably would read kind of ho-hum just with the plot. Jesus, ADHD. Wow. The plot would feel kind of, okay, Spawn evolves again. There's a guy, he gets killed. But it is cool to see another writer's take on it, especially when paired with art of this caliber that is its own argument for existing.
I think the other thing helping it is, and I had a pretty good time with these issues, the complaints we have notwithstanding.
Right. Nitpicks here and there, but
yeah, we'll pick some nits on this podcast. But, on the whole, this did a little bit more of what I wish the main Spawn title would do, which is juggle an A and a B plot and a C plot in a way that's, maybe that's just Steve Niles being decently skilled at that, and being able to balance the horror elements, basically maybe saying to Ashley Wood, like, I want to give it like this, like Hellboy Nosferatu feel. What can you do with that?
Right.
This is what's happening during this metamorphosis. This is what
Steve Niles, more of a horror guy, less of a crime guy.
Right. And I think that having Todd there to kind of make us remember how this kind of goes, and he gets to do his detective little section with Sam and Twitch. Great to see them again. And then we move into Spawn. So yeah, like overall, like some of the aspects are like kind of ho-hum, but then like the story of Cygor's birth kind of is pretty sad. The place that Cygor finds himself and Jason Wynn is nearby this kind of
interesting.
USSG situation. There's a lot of moving parts. Like this is the kind of stuff that we didn't always get, that we wouldn't get in 8 issues of the main Spawn title, because 8 issues of the main Spawn title, if we went from 1 to 8, is like Spawn just not knowing anything for 8 issues.
Right.
And not really learning anything. And like he'll fight a bunch of cyborgs, and that's fine.
And this does feel a little bit like filling in those little gaps and sanding off the edges, like Todd said in that letter.
I think by letting this be where the darker details of those stories can live, that now it's going to be impossible, right, to go back to the normal Spawn book and not think of those things, especially when we see Clown again, when we see Jason Wynn again, when we see Cygor again.
Right.
Those things will always be in our head. And also even Ashley Wood's renderings, I think, are so striking that they're pretty unforgettable. Like that's going to change the way
his
that
Violator is so good. Still thinking about it.
Amazing. So I think also too that this is one of the first times that the story doesn't feel small in the way that the main Spawn title has felt small at times, because it's so abstract in its visuals. We are a little unmoored. We're not always sure where we are. We're a little bit on edge because of that. It does feel like a horror movie in that way, but then like
there's a suspense to it that comes just from the atmosphere of the art and the style.
Especially like Damascus taking that big elevator down to this secret sci-fi Nazi.
Oh, and the weird doctors in there and everything. So creepy.
It was cool. So I'm very on board with this book. I'm happy that we did it and are doing it.
We're surfing through the summer of Hellspawn.
So before we go, because we've been going at it for a while.
Yeah.
Got any recommendations for our listeners this week, George?
I do. This will be a couple weeks late in terms of the chronological time frame when you hear these episodes, but it's never too late. I want to say that I actually really enjoyed Ironheart, and I thought it was a really fun show.
I watched one episode.
Yeah. I think it's worth watching all 6, I'll say. It starts out a little bit rough. There are a couple things that it needs to establish. It has some kind of like silly approaches to a couple little things. But by the end, it's kind of the stuff I really loved about the MCU to start with. It's really reminiscent of the original Iron Man, where it's like Riri Williams built this in a garage from scraps. Kind of picks up the Ironmonger story as well. It has something that I love, which is characters that I know from comics coming in a way that I think is cool. So I thought it's getting review bombed because it stars a young black woman. And I just want to be at least one small voice somewhere out there saying, no, it's pretty good. It was pretty good. Better than a lot of those Marvel shows. And maybe it helped that I could watch it all. I didn't have to wait weeks and weeks for it to unfold. But I thought it had a good villain. They spent a lot more time with the characters than you often get in these shows. So I recommend it. If you like a superhero show,
I was watching with my brother over the weekend, and he was like, you want to give it a try? He's like, I don't really know anything about her except that she's in Black Panther 2. And I was like, oh, Riri Williams, created by the King, Brian Michael Bendis.
Exactly.
But we were watching it, and he was like, this would be such a good supervillain origin.
You should keep watching it.
All right, I will.
Because that's kind of what it is.
Kind of sick. So
that's okay. I will say this. If you were watching it and you were like, this would kind of be a good supervillain origin, you're picking up the vibe of the show.
All right, cool. That makes me happy to hear. So my recommendation this week, oh man, I don't really have like a great one. I don't think. I don't even know what I've even been like listening to this week. Yeah.
Well, Pierce, it can't be all nihilism. You got to think of something.
You know, it'll be.
I can't recommend anything.
My recommendation is drink water. It's hot out there.
We'll reiterate that one. Yeah. No time like the present to drink more water. 100% agree.
Drink some water and oh, and you know what? And I have probably recommended this already, but I've been going back and watching old episodes. Patrick H. Willems does great breakdowns about movies. If you want to be a movie nerd, fucking watch some of his video essays. He did some great episodes about trains recently in filmmaking. He also did a thing about mega cities in like 90s movies, which was really fun. That was like 6 months ago, but just an interesting. He's a really smart guy. Like his videos are really entertaining, like the way he breaks stuff down, and always good to get a smart person's perspective on art, because like, I don't know, that's what we do. That's what we try to do. And he's definitely somebody I've been, following for a while, and definitely informs my own opinions. So I
right.
definitely recommend his YouTube channel. I think it's really great.
There you go.
Cool. Well, George, I have one last thing to say. For Todd so loved the world,
he gave his only begotten spawn.
See you later, Hellspawn.
Spawnography!
Spawnography is recorded in Athens, Georgia, and Queens, New York. It's produced by me, Pierce Lyden. Our theme music and logo were composed by George Marston. Episodes come out every Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe. You can find us on social media at Spawnography or at SpawnographyPod. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can do so at spawnographypod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, see you later, Hellspawn.